Okay. I'm having a little trouble with this podium. It's nearly as big as I am. Bigger? Okay, so my name is Ellen Oakes, and I want to welcome you all here tonight. This is great. We've got a pretty good turnout tonight, and a lot of energy moving around in the theater here. I am on the board of the recently formed Chippewa Valley chapter of the League of Women Voters. League of Women Voters, Greater Chippewa Valley. And we have been in the process of forming our group during this past year. We just learned today that we have state recognition for our chapter. That is wonderful. And the next step in the process is for them to send on the materials to national, to get recognized on the national level as well. So we are feeling very good about that, and very good about tonight's effort. This is our first candidate forum that we have presented. So we're trying to do it right and learn how to do it better. I want to take just a moment to acknowledge the generosity of the board of the Mabel Tainter Center for the Arts offering us the use of this theater for tonight's meeting. They did offer that use gratis, and we are grateful for that. As an infant league chapter, we do not have any money. And that is why there are donation jars at each entrance, if you are so inclined. Also, we need more members because we are a growing chapter, and if anyone is interested, there is material at the table at that corner, and Louisa can help you get your name and email down so we can contact you at that corner. When you came in, you were given some cards to write questions on. The way this will work is that the cards come forward, and I have two people who will be picking them up from you. The cards will come forward to this table where our president, Kits Cleary, and our secretary, Cheryl Miller, will be screening them in case someone's not being Menomonie nice, but I don't believe that. I know a lot of the people here, so that's not going to happen. And also, if there are a number of questions on the same topic, kind of consolidating that. Because we have 5 candidates and we want them all to talk to you, we probably won't get through 30 questions tonight. We'll be lucky if we get through 15, but we will do our best. So I'm not going to go into much more detail there. If you like, you can direct your question to a particular candidate. Kits and Cheryl will also be making sure that when a question is asked of a particular candidate to start with, and then others can also answer that same question. Some of the candidates may have put some campaign material outside on the table. You're not allowed to have that in the room with the event, but they may have done that, and that's available for you to look at. And Andrew tells me that there is refreshment which is available for purchase. Each candidate will be allowed to open by introducing himself or herself, having up to 3 minutes to do that, and then we will get into the questions. So we have drawn for who gets to go first, and oh yes, that will be this poor fellow here. He is going to be watching these 2 ladies that are sitting in the front row, because when his 3 minutes are up, or almost up, he'll see the 30-second sign. You want to show that to the audience? And when he's supposed to stop, he will see that sign. So that is how we are going to proceed, and I want to introduce to you, you can see their names too, but I will introduce the candidates to you. Make sure I remember. We have Chris Freeman and Jim Swanson. And I hope Urs Haltener is how you pronounce it. I didn't ask you. That's
part of my motivation in being on the school board is making sure that everybody in this school district gets the same chance at a quality education that my children did. The other thing I did is I taught alternative ed from about 1991 up until I retired. And the other thing I'm really passionate about is making sure that everyone gets a chance at an education. You know, my daughters were really smart and they were in student council and all that stuff. At the same time, I was working out at the alternative school with all of the kids that didn't fit in, all the kids that were thrown out, you know, and those are the ones that I really focused on and want to make sure that they do well. The other thing I just want to say, kind of a little note here, anyone that knows me knows that the genes don't exist in my DNA for dancing, singing, and acting. But I have a lot of hobbies, so I own a lot of really cool stuff. And a bunch of my cool stuff has been in a bunch of plays up here at the Tainer on the stage. So I've come to watch my stuff on the stage. So now I am equal to my stuff, so this is really cool. So thank you for everyone for coming, and I will pass it on to Urs.
Urs Haltener.
Okay, I'm Urs Haltener, and yep, it's URS, also known as Earth by some people. I'm passionate about teaching, and I can tell you I have a lived experience in teaching in the K-12 system. I've been a teacher for 28 years. As a matter of fact, I'm working on my 29th year. I grew up within the Swiss education system, and I can tell you what my children experienced here, despite the IPEDS data, which says the Swiss system is one of the best. I would contend that we have one of the supreme education systems that embraces all learners, not just some learners. I believe in two great professions that are the professions of all professions, and I'm going to start with teaching and farming. Both are under siege in some ways. Both are going through immense change. Both are incredibly technologically infused in shaping the world as we know it. I've had the opportunity to serve on the school board for the past 3 years. It's been a pleasure. It's been a lot of learning, quite honestly, and it's been humbling in terms of the resources that school districts have and don't have, and the expectations that are placed on them to do so many things with finite resources. I'm going to say a school is part of a larger community. When the school aches, the community aches. When the school is great, the community is great. It's a symbiotic relationship. When schools have challenges, communities have challenges, and I would suggest that we have a responsibility. The school is oftentimes the thing that defines the very community we live in. It's the pride of the community, the coffee table in the living room, the one thing you don't put your heels up on, because we all tend to be in agreement that a public education is the thing that we need here most. So I'm passionate about teachers. I'm passionate about the same things that Chris says. This is about empowerment and teachers taking back the power. However, we are competing in a competitive world, and we better do a great job in making good decisions on how we empower our students with the kind of knowledge they need. Thanks.
Tricia Thompson.
Hi, I'm Tricia Thompson, and I live in Menomonie. Let's see a little bit about me. I am married to my husband, Pete, and we have two sons, a 6th grader at the middle school, and we have a 2nd grader at Oak Lawn Elementary. In addition, in 2003, we adopted my brother and sister, who both went on to graduate from the Menomonie High School. And the reason I'm running for the school board is a multitude of reasons, but a big part is that I am the eldest of 9 children, and growing up in that family where often my parents didn't feel like they were a part of their school system, I, witnessed some really frustrating times in our life. And, essentially, I want to be the person that my parents always needed and always wished they would have had in the school system. The other thing is that for the last 20 years, I've been working with families with children with disabilities all over the state of Wisconsin. I started out, because I have a special education license, in the central city of Milwaukee doing home visits and meeting with families that were experiencing challenges that most of us could only begin to imagine. And I really got to understand where some of the problems were with their, I heard a lot about the challenges that they had with their school system, and I mean, Milwaukee is a different animal, I completely get that, but I can tell you with all honesty, traveling all over in the north area, like to Wausau, down to Prairie du Chien, I am seeing a lot of familiar, very similar concerns that these families are experiencing with their school district, and it's very similar to some of the challenges I've heard that we have here. And a lot of the times the families feel like they are disenfranchised, like they aren't, their information and their perspective is not valued when it comes to policies and procedures. And ultimately, I want to be that bridge that helps connect the school district with those families, because I know how to do that. I know how to engage the families. I've been doing it for a very long time. And I hope that I'm able to do that. And I look forward to the opportunity. Thank you.
And Penny Burstad.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. I am Penny Burstad. I have lived in Menomonie since starting as a Scout student in 1997 and loved it here, and I've never left. My husband Monty and I own Burstad Insurance Agency here in town. I have a 4th grade son and a 7th grade daughter, and I have been on the board for 2 years. I am the current sitting board vice president and am very appreciative of the role and the responsibility that comes with that. I decided to get on the board after being on the PTO at Wakanda and realizing that I wanted to help make a difference. I don't belong in a classroom, I belong in a setting with adults. And that's okay. It's okay to understand that. And as the PTO president, I had a lot of teachers that would come to me with their questions, their concerns, and I felt like I was a good advocate for those teachers to go to some of the higher powers, to speak with the principals, to speak with the superintendent, and to try to bridge that gap that everybody says is there. And I feel like I still have those relationships with the teachers in my role on the school board, and being on the board is not something that you learn overnight. And I've got 2 years in, and I feel like right now I'm at a place where I understand everything that comes behind it. The finances, the intricacies, the policies, everything that happens. And so I have 3 more years in me to keep moving forward and keep improving our district. We're moving in a good direction with our, with what we have coming up in the next year, with our, sorry, losing my train of thought. With our plans and everything that's happening, we're moving in a good direction, and I would like to keep moving forward with that. So thank you for having us.
I don't think it will surprise the audience or the candidates that the first set of questions is regarding guns in our schools. So if I can do a mashup here, do you support March for Our Lives? And would you support student rights to participate in such protests? One of the hot topics right now is in regard to guns in schools, and what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on arming the teachers? What are your thoughts of providing a safe environment rather than a more fearful one? Do we have, are you telling me which candidate starts?
No, they are, the candidate that decides to answer it is fine, and then the others will have a chance. Everyone, none of these are, that we've seen so far are directed to a single candidate.
Okay. Jim Swanson will speak first.
So first I'd like to, is this on? Okay. First, just a little background about myself. I am on the board of directors of the Wisconsin Wildlife Federation. We're one of the largest conservation organizations in the state. So we were advocating for hunting all the time. I received an award from them as the Outdoor Educator of the Year in 2011. And I received that award for teaching about 6,000 people how to shoot. I always have a freezer full of venison, and I have a dresser drawer completely full of trophies that I've won in shoots. So guns are definitely not something that's strange to me. I'm very familiar with them. And of course I was in education for many, many years, so I think I have a good perspective on this. And first off, I don't think, well, as far as the march, that's freedom of expression. And the great thing about the First Amendment is that people get to march and protest and say things whether you agree with them or not. And if you say they have free speech, as long as you agree with them, then that's not free speech. So, great. I think it's great to see kids being involved in politics. And there wasn't just people marching for the, gun control. There was also people marching against it. There was both. So that was great. As far as guns in schools and arming teachers, I really don't think it's a great idea for a number of reasons. Number one, oh my, that was fast. Okay, well, very quickly, so there's many problems. Number one is training, okay? It takes over 40 hours for an officer in Wisconsin to be able to carry a gun. Number two is insurance and liability. There's been places where they were going to arm teachers and the insurance company said, we're going to drop your insurance if you get the teachers' guns. It's not safe. And thirdly, I don't know how many of you hunt, but if you've been out in the woods and you've missed a deer, imagine being in a school with 500 screaming kids and bullets flying and trying to do something. And one more point, really quick. No?
Well, I'm going to take a stab at this. I'm one of those kids whose father enjoyed, once we moved over here, he absolutely enjoyed hunting, and that's actually the reason why we re-immigrated into the United States. However, my father also said, Urs, you should never, ever shoot a gun again, because he caught us felling popple trees with 30-06s. The reality of it is we were raised in a way where the belief was guns were secure, guns were to be revered, and marksmanship classes were always part of it. And so I do believe in youth empowered. I think the next greatest generation is on its way. They have found their voice. I think they're going to voice very loudly and are going to make some substantial changes. I think they're awakening to voting their choices. So I'm a big fan of youth, and I see lots of amazing capabilities in them in this day and age.
Who wants to be next?
So as far as March for Our Lives, absolutely. I want to reiterate what Jim said. totally support somebody's First Amendment rights. As far as arming teachers, I've talked to a lot of teachers, and honestly, not a single teacher has ever said to me, I want to carry a gun. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but I can tell you, it's not just in my community that I've talked to these teachers. Nobody has ever said they felt comfortable doing that. And to be honest, and there's the fiscal implications, there's the liability, but also that is, I've never wanted to homeschool my kids. That would be the line for us. We will not have our kids in a school district that has teachers with firearms because of all the concerns that have already been mentioned. But absolutely, we need a safe environment. There's different ways to get to that safe environment. I truly believe that we need to have more mental health counselors / social workers in the school district, because that is the way that we're going to be able to actually get to know these families and these students and understand what the underlying issues are, so that we don't end up with a tragedy like we've seen so often and too often.
I have to say I have a different take on that. I have a 12-year-old, almost 13-year-old daughter that is currently a trap shooter in Menomonie. She's on the team. And I am really pleased with the fact that my child has learned how to handle a firearm. And I have spoken with teachers that are hunters and conceal and carry holders that would prefer to have that option. And I don't disagree with them. If you are a safe gun owner and a smart gun owner, I grew up in a house full of guns. And my dad wasn't a hunter, he was a collector, and he was a trap shooter, and I was taught the respect of guns. Having a gun in a classroom doesn't mean a student will get a hold of it, it means our students are safer. I don't agree with just barricading doors. I don't agree with I heard something today talking about having a bucket of rocks in the classroom in California to throw at someone that may be an attacker. I don't agree with that. I don't want to arm teachers that don't want to be armed, but those people that feel that they're comfortable and confident and responsible gun owners, I don't have an opposition to it. I do agree with the liability perspective of it, and that will be a potential expense for possibly the teacher or the district, but that's something that will come down the road.
Yeah, I can project on this one. I really can. I hate this thing. Okay, timer started. All right, first of all, I wish to God that all our kids could speak truth to power, like those kids involved in that Parkland protest. Right now, our Menomonie students don't do that. They aren't given a voice, and they aren't given the wholeness of education that sees their role in society as speaking up. That's not part of their standardized testing. Sadly enough, that happened because of tragedy. But I think our kids could be woke, right, and to use their terminology to that outlook. Second of all, the one thing that scares me is that nobody here spoke to the fact that you can't go into a classroom and have the type of relationship with your students, honest, open, equal, nurturing, if you're packing heat. That's outrageous. You know? It's why you need people on the school board who are teachers. One of my students is here right now. I would never walk in a classroom with a gun. You know, learning is a partnership. Students are teachers and teachers are learners. And if you don't think that gun's gonna get in the way, you're not a teacher. And when it comes to guns in the classroom, it should be part of vigorous debate about what the Second Amendment is. It's written in the 18th century in the context of militias. Our students don't understand that. It's not part of their curriculum. We think of the Second Amendment as something that stands for all eternity in terms of the outlooks of our founding fathers. They would never give a gun to a woman, a person of color, a Native American. Guns were put in the hands of people because we didn't have a professional army. But is that discussion happening in our schools? No.
Our board president pointed out to me, I failed to mention to you that there are 6 candidates for the 3 slots on the school board. And John Stray offers his apologies. He thought he would be able to come tonight, but a business trip interfered. So he is not here. So there is one question mark for tonight's evening. All 3 of these questions are complex. Traditional U.S. democracy is being challenged at all levels of government, state and national. Voter suppression, contempt for judicial rulings, disrespect for law, confusion about the Bill of Rights, First, Second, and 14th Amendments, and other challenges to American democracy all are worrisome. Alarmed as we may be at this, the more important discussion here is preparing students to evaluate what they see and hear, and thus be able to deal with rhetoric and misinformation. How can the Menomonie School Board help teachers produce informed citizens who know their civic rights and responsibilities? Who would like to be first on that? You can only have 2 minutes.
It's okay. All right. I think that fundamentally that it's not that we have to teach our students how to be good citizens. You can't do that. It's not up to us to teach our students to value the Constitution or its amendments. You can't do that. The only thing we can do is to encourage them to ask questions in ways that they can see themselves represented in their own voice and in their own community. It seems to me that question has everything backwards. Just like everything I've seen in terms of the recent movement of how instruction happens in the classroom, students are seen as a container that can be opened up. You can fill them with information and values. It's not how it works. It's an interactive dialogue. They need mentors. Mentors in the classrooms, mentors leading their schools. They need mentors in our community. If our students don't value democracy, our town doesn't. And that's a problem. Do we value inclusivity in our community? I don't know. I was just knocking on doors the last 2 weekends. I've seen a lot of people who have been left behind in housing, opportunity, economic development. Is that democracy? So rather than asking how we can fill our students with information, we need to be asking ourselves, what is the framework for developing them into the types of people who ask the right kinds of questions? And seeing themselves reflected in a community that's flourishing, that nourishes, and that protects not a constitution, only insofar as a constitution protects a community, right, that gives value to all the people who live there.
I think part of the narrative of that question can be answered through is actually also deep reflection and looking in the mirror, looking at ourselves, and understanding that we are, in fact, our children's first teachers. To what extent have we done a good job being the role models? Remember, our children listen, our children observe. A lot of the things that we're struggling with in this day and age have a lot to do with what we also either intentionally or unintentionally modeled. And it, you know, humans want to be good inherently. Humans want to do the right thing. We have to do better in modeling to our young people as parents. We have to do better at being the teachers our children need to be in terms of things that we model too. And teachers inherently are obviously advocates for children. So it also impacts, to some degree, the conversations we're willing to have with our students, and to have the courage to then voice the displeasure sometimes with the parents that might be thinking differently.
Well, I think part of this is we have, you know, teaching, and as social studies was one of my favorite topics to teach at the alternative school, is we start with history and we start with civics. And we teach the fundamentals of American history, both the good and the bad. You know, there's a lot of things that get glossed over in our history sometimes that we probably need to spend more time. We need to work on, you know, teaching what the Constitution is about. You know, that you have rights, but also you have responsibilities. The other thing I think we've really failed to teach is we need to teach, once again, people how to have a debate. You know, people don't debate anymore, they just yell at each other a lot of times, especially if you watch TV. I mean, I don't even do that, I don't have a TV, but when I have the misfortune of seeing talk shows, you know, it's just two people yelling at each other, not even listening. And I think something we need to teach people is to have debates, reasoned debates in our schools, and also to just simply have respect and tolerance for each other, and to agree sometimes to just disagree. Those are, I think, the way we do it. And as founding fathers, one of the most important things was to the rule of law and understand it. So, thank you.
Jim,
Yeah, I know.
I will just say that what I would love to be able to see in the schools more often is that, because I feel like the best way to evaluate misinformation and encourage civic responsibility is to get kids out in the community working more often. My special concern is with kids with disability, and I think that they are often provided alternative experiences, and so when he was talking, I was thinking about how there are some families that I've worked with that have also mentioned about how, you know, they provided information to me that just was not correct, but it is information that is passed down from generation to generation to generation, and I thought several times, like, at what point did somebody challenge these thoughts, and then was somebody you know, open to the idea that you might have been presenting a different thought, and were they okay with that? And so, like, kind of what Jim was saying, we really need to have more debate, but we also have to be willing to accept that somebody might not have the same opinion of us, and we can learn still from their perspective.
Again, I am very impressed by what Jim had to say, and when you go into the misinformation thing, and I think that's kind of the key right now in our technologically advanced world. I love technology. I'm a techie geek, but it's teaching especially our younger students how to go out and use that piece of technology and get the broad picture. Wikipedia is not the end-all, be-all of the answers of the universe. There are so many other things. You need to dig a little bit deeper, and you need to really understand the base of what you're trying to learn and not just gloss over the surface. And again, go respect other people's thoughts and use what you can find, and just really delve in versus quickly typing in a keyword and getting that that what could be misinformation where it's one opinion or one thought process and getting the true meaning of what's happening depending on what subject it is, whether it's politics, whether it's science, whether it's history, there's way more to it.
Glasses.
Well, these questions are related. And if we divided all these questions up into individual questions, we would be here until midnight. How do we keep great new young teachers from leaving for a higher paying job in Minnesota? How would you as a school board member support better STEM program? Do you know what STEM is? You all know. Well, we'll have to explain that. One of you can explain STEM for me. And what is the current budget for the school district? These fit together. Oh.
No, go ahead, Jeff. Well, it doesn't matter. No. Sorry, Helen. I don't mean to knock you down, but quite honestly, those really don't fit together.
I was not supposed to read the second one.
Oh.
How do we keep great new teachers, and what's the current budget, and how much do you know about what the budget and the teacher shortage have to do with one another?
Okay, perfect. So, keeping great new teachers is setting a great environment. It's making it a welcoming environment. It's using our senior teachers to help mentor these new young teachers. I feel that we offer a solid package for our incoming teachers, and that is great. Sorry, what was the rest of the question? You threw a lot out at me. Budget. Oh, our current budget is around $40 million. We have a big district. We have a lot of things happening, and that's overall operating, teachers, retirement. We have a lot of things taking place. We are one of the higher paying districts in the state, and especially in our area, and there's a teacher shortage all over our state and all over the nation, unfortunately. And all we can do is encourage a positive atmosphere, I think, with the different QIC groups that we have happening, and the open door policy with, the school board members, with the administration. We have amazing principals in our building that do support our teachers and will help support those new teachers. I think that should bring new teachers in. Unfortunately, pay is a big thing, and benefits packages are a big thing, and young teachers are looking for stepping stones. And our district is kind of a median place for good teachers. They start in the super small districts, they move to us, and they might move to a bigger Milwaukee type district. So we will keep supporting them as much as we can, let them, give them professional development and support, and do what we can for them.
I think this is it.
You're good.
Okay, there's the sound too. This is one of the things that I'm uniquely invested in. What I may not have told you is beyond PK-12 teaching, I've been a teacher educator for almost 17 years. The one thing I can tell you about this change, this teacher supply and demand inequity, has been predictable. This is an inequity in terms of fewer young people stepping into the world of work and retirement age. My age, 58-year-olds going into, starting to step out. The one thing I do know is it's based on having invited young people into teaching is when we get them into teacher education, And with every shift that takes place in the legislature, we lose young people's momentum in wanting to teach, because it's seen as kind of a profession in kind of a state of flux. Our young people aren't leading us because of money, contrary to what a lot of people seem to think. Our young people leave us because either they feel disempowered or they are drawn to their industry expertise arena. And our career and technical teachers are at stake of leaving the profession because of course they can make more money, but they also wiggle around in the passion of what they get to teach within that spectrum.
Well, I think here in Menomonie, I've been on the board for 3 years, we've done as much as we can within the framework of what the state allows us to do in order to support teachers. We do have good pay. Our benefits are okay. I think one mistake we made a few years ago was changing, we kind of were forced into it, but we changed the health insurance benefit to an HSA plan, which doesn't really guarantee benefits when the teacher retires, and before that they had a guaranteed benefit. So that kind of removed an incentive for the younger teachers to stick around. Part of the problem we're facing really, I mean, it is a national problem, but it's more intense here in Wisconsin because of what's happened at the state level. You know, we've seen really a lot of education, teachers unions, and all of these things attacked, and that we need to change that if we really want to keep these people. And that's one of the main reasons they're moving to Minnesota, is better working conditions, better overall atmosphere for education. And so that's, you know, something we can't fix, but we need to advocate as school board members at the state level saying, hey, we have a problem, we need to fix this.
I think I get a theme that I'd like to pick up on, and that is that I don't think anyone here is equipped to answer that question. If we were to actually care about why we can't keep good young teachers here, we would be asking them that. There would be a adequately supported and funded teachers union that would be advocates for them. Do we have one? We do. And I think each of us met with 3 of them this weekend. They told me a lot about what it means to be a young teacher in this town. I couldn't believe how young they were. They were beautiful. They had big ideas. And they know what's going to keep them here. And what's going to keep them here is finding ways in which that their voice can direct the way in which that they can create learning environments for their students that make them feel good about themselves. In this town, we seem to value our football team more than we value teachers that are here, that are making a difference in lifelong learning for our students and for our community. It just kills me. Mustang pride's all over this town, but there's not a lot of pride in terms of the way in which that, as a community, we're supporting our teachers that add value and meaning to our students' lives. So I think we should be more honest about the questions we can answer here. We haven't reached out to them. We don't make an adequate appraisal of how they see themselves in relationship to their job. Really, we should be asking them how we can make their jobs better. You know?
What is your position? Oh, sorry.
I think it's answered. Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay. I was just going to say that when I was a teacher in Milwaukee for 6 years, one of the things that helped me a lot was having a mentor, someone to ask questions of, to guide me, to provide insight, and someone just to listen to me at times when I had I had questions, but I knew there weren't really any answers that could be given. The other thing is that I think that out-of-box thinking teachers really need to be encouraged in the school district, and we need to be open to new ideas and approaches. And I also believe that In order to do that, you have to not micromanage them. You need to give them some space to be able to be creative. And unfortunately, I feel like I'm seeing a lot of micromanaging going on, and that really concerns me.
Sorry about that. Okay. Someone in the audience has been reading the newspaper. What is your position on hiring at least one school social worker? How will you prioritize mental health issues? Who would like to start?
Well, I've been advocating for this for a while, and in fact, I talked to the superintendent before the last board meeting and said, can you see if you can figure out how to work this into the budget? And he is. Although it sounds like it's quite a chaos from the discussion we had last night. Where you had to sign a form in blood 3 times to get an answer out of the DPI in 2 weeks or something like that. But yeah, we definitely need a social worker. I mean, when I was in the district, we had a social worker. The person did amazing things and worked with the mental health of the students. One of the things I think that we really need to do is we need to make it possible for not just the psychologists and the counselors and the social workers, but the students, the teachers, the janitor, the secretary, principal. They need to get to know the students and develop a relationship. When I worked in the alternative school, that was our first goal. It wasn't to get the kids working. It wasn't to get them, figure out what they're going to do with their life. It was just to simply get to know them. And so, in alternative education, you had all kinds of issues. And so we got to know the kids, and when they came in one day and we could tell they were wound up and there was a problem, we could fix it. And so one of the biggest things with mental health is just making it possible in the rigmarole of the day, and I mean high school days and elementary, they're all just crazy busy. But just find a way that our staff can make connections with students, that when the student has a problem, they have somebody to turn to.
If it's okay, I'll chime in on this one next. I have kids in the district, and my family is going through a time right now, and the schools do know our kids. We have Peg Colden at River Heights that on the first day of every school year, she makes a point of learning every student's name, and she knows them. And our teachers and our social workers, our psychologists, our guidance counselors, our janitors, our lunch people, all know our students. I think that that's a misconception that these kids walk through the halls as strangers every day, because if you walk the halls of any of our schools, our teachers know our students and they are highly involved. As far as the social worker goes, and this was a conversation last night at the board meeting, and I was relatively vocal in the fact that I am not anti-social worker. I think it's very important, but finding the best way to use those funds that are going to help our students the most is what makes the most sense. A social worker in our district would have to cover 16 sites at this point. That's a lot, one person for a lot of hours and a lot of different places. And is that really what we need the most? Do we need to put more money into guidance? Do we need to put more money into psychologists? Where should those dollars go that could be more beneficial? Because one body and 16 places is not going to help the students the way that they need to be helped, in my mind. But feeling like our students are not known is absolutely untrue. Our students are known. They know that if they are upset, if they are unhappy, they can go to their teacher, and their teacher will guide them to a guidance counselor or a school psychologist. I am beyond happy with the support that my children have received on the social side of our district.
One of my big concerns, let me just start off by saying that I absolutely believe that we do need to have a social worker in the school district. I think we need overall more attention provided to mental health. My concern is, like Penny just alluded to, that you take one person and you stretch them over so far that they're not able to be as effective as they could have if there was more than just one. And I am concerned about that. But I can tell you from personal experience, living in my family with my parents both having disabilities and multiple issues within our family, and traveling to schools, we moved so many times in my lifetime. The social worker was the person who I knew was a constant. She was the person, or he was the person, who would, right away got the records from the school and understood what the challenges that we were dealing with, and I always knew that that person was the safe person to go talk to. I also have to say that the reality is, these families that I'm working with again, all over the state, they are not necessarily known by their teachers. It is not, in an ideal world, yes, they would, all the teachers would be interacting with them, and they would know their families, but they're also just one person. And the teachers have lots of kids on, that they are responsible for teaching. So I think that that's an issue too, that we need to have smaller classroom sizes as well, so that they can get to know their students better. But regardless, I could talk for hours on this topic because it is so passionate to me, but we need to, whether it's a school social worker or bringing in other mental health resources, we need to start paying attention to that.
I think you'll find a common theme that we're obviously all supportive of this. I keep thinking about the fact that perhaps this is, again, a reflection on our community. What's going on in our community? What kind of supports are we missing within our community when our children, in fact, bear the most resemblance of needing significant supports within schools? I can't help but think about the sustainability aspect of bringing one or two social workers into a district. How does that change the dynamics that surround that child the rest of the week, the rest of the year, during those times that the student isn't in school and may not have that kind of access? Is this perhaps a family education issue in some ways? Is it perhaps a family support issue in some other ways? So I think we do need to marshal the efforts of county, school, and perhaps city professionals in a sustainable solution for this.
Well, I think the question was whether or not we should hire a social worker and everyone should be able to unequivocally say yes. When we added teachers to come into our department that teach social work, it made historians better. We were more inclusive in our classroom. It made political science better. It made anthropology better. It made GIS better. It made us all better. We need to send a statement that the legislator that cut our funding, that has handed us probably a 20-year deficit on education in this state, is real. And we don't have to pretend like what we're doing now is good enough. And when you send messages as if we can cut these aspects of what a public school mission is all about, you just set yourselves up for continued failure to provide the types of services that our students need. So one can advocate for more, and one can have an effect not just on one school, but all the schools in terms of the way in which that we make this present. Every day, we're trying. It's a work in progress. It's not enough. And we need to rethink how the school board advocates for students, not just in making policy, but in pushing back against short-sighted legislative decisions. They're having a long-term impact on our community and our kids. So their answer is, yes, you hire one, and then you hire another, and then you hire another. But you have to start somewhere. And we can't keep backpedaling on what education looks like in this community. We can.
It's easy to lose track up here. I have two different questions regarding bullying in the schools. I was trying to make an amalgamation out of them and it's not working. How do you plan to deal with parents and/or teachers who seem unwilling to handle students who regularly treat others in a malicious manner? I think that comes closest to the combination. And this would be from a school board perspective. You know, these guys are not applying to be your teachers. They're applying to be your school board representative.
No, that's fair. We can't make punitive policies that can step in and reprimand individual students or their parents. We can't move into that environment. But this has come up before the school board. Menomonie Cares tried to make an inclusive welcome message for how we create a culture of welcome for all of our students. And this board couldn't pass it. They couldn't pass a proclamation of welcome for all of our students to set a culture that we care about them and that they're safe here and that they're protected. They couldn't pass it. We already have that covered in some other line of classroom discussion. I guess if you discuss it once in 8th grade, that's good enough. It's not. It needs to be in the hallways. It needs to be in our literature. It needs to be in our community. You know, the question is well-founded, but we address it with a culture that addresses the problem. And that is that students don't think they have to be kind to each other. And they don't think that our schools necessarily even support that idea. If our school board can't even pass a simple measure of a proclamation of welcome, I mean, students figure that out pretty quick. They know what's valued. Sports, STEM, things that you can sell, things that you can test for, not things that you can value.
A proclamation is great and good, and the proclamation as a whole is a good thing, but unfortunately, given the legality behind it, that's the reason the proclamation did not pass. Our students don't care about a proclamation. Our students don't care about a mission statement. It is taught in the classrooms. Our students are taught to be good people. We have great teachers. We have outstanding administrators that are trying every day to make them good people. This comes from the home. This has nothing to do with a proclamation. This has nothing to do with a mission statement. This has to do with starting at the home and being carried through and follow through in our whole district, through our whole community. Proclamations are great and good, but they aren't the end-all be-all. A second grader doesn't care what a proclamation says. They're still going to be mean if they're going to be mean, if they aren't taught not to be mean and how to be a good person.
So at the school board level, you know, we don't deal with the parents or the students. And if they get to that point, it's an expulsion. But what we do is we set the policy. And we make sure that it's done and applied properly. So as a school board and as a school board member, what we do is we need to make sure, we do this routinely. I mean, we review our policy constantly. We make sure we have anti-bullying policies. We make sure we have policies on mental health and all the things we need to do. And then we make sure that they get enforced. That's pretty much what our role is as a school board.
7.
I feel like I should say something because this is a topic that's also very near and dear to my heart. When we moved here from the previous school district, we had a lot of issues with bullying in that other school district. And the difference was when we moved here was that I always felt like we had allies. I felt like my brother had an ally and I felt like we had allies. But some people don't feel that way. And I think that that's the key to ending bullying, is to find a way to develop some allies within the families and students. And for families to feel like they have a place to go when they're have concerns with their kids. And I think a lot of teachers, and I mean, I don't know of any teacher that doesn't care about the topic, but sometimes it's not right out in front of us. Sometimes we have to recognize something in the children that isn't necessarily obvious. But then there's the whole reality of, teachers are, charged with a whole lot of stuff that they have to be responsible for. But ultimately, I really do believe that bullying is best stopped when children and families feel like they have allies.
I can't help but just remind us again, our children are watching. Every night we watch TV if we choose to. The dialogue, the rhetoric that's slammed around, we're teaching them as a society to be exactly who they become. So it behooves all of us, including myself, to be better, to be a better person, to be the kind of person that our children deserve, to be their role model.
Is that it? Okay. Okay, we have a question about, from someone who has taught science, saying, I've been called a fake teacher and worse for teaching evolution and the science of climate change. Colleges and universities always back me up. What would you do from the school board level to support science teachers who teach science? How would you respond to a special interest request on that or another topic a parent finds objectionable?
You guys are hogging the mic so we've obviously had some controversy in our district, and science is science, and there is an opt-out policy in our district that parents can follow. I feel like everything needs to be taught on an even basis. You need to be able to have the conversation, which was something we had discussed earlier today, is having a conversation. There are more sides to a story. There's more sides to everything. And when I was growing up as a kid, we did learn science, textbook science, and if parents have an issue with that, they can choose to opt out. They can choose to have a conversation with their student when they get home at the end of the day, but we don't know. At the end of the day, nobody truly knows what the real story is, and that's okay. I don't think it needs to become a big controversial issue in the district. I think it takes away from things like mental health and bullying and what the district needs to be concerned with and what the board really needs to be concerned with as well.
I think when you look at Menomonie's curriculum across the board, you'll find a really well-balanced curriculum. This isn't about science, it isn't about the social and behavioral sciences, it isn't about STEM, it's about all of it. It's about having diversity of perspectives. And when you really deeply look at the curriculum, it serves our students very well. While we sometimes have objections as individual parents, my take on that is I get to raise my children to live in a world. I get to help them have a multitude of perspectives. And I think that's the perspective that every teacher comes at this with too. We do need to support that teacher that has to, cough up a reason for why their discipline is worthy. I'm not sure why it wouldn't be worthy. It's science, we're crying out loud, right? It explains a lot of what we are about.
Well, I guess it starts with curriculum. I mean, we have guidelines that we have to follow. It comes down from the state. I mean, I understand why some people, they have beliefs that, the science isn't true or whatever. And I guess basically, if that's your opinion, then prove it with science. Science is peer-reviewed, science is replicable. If you can come in and say what we're teaching isn't peer-reviewed and replicable, then I guess we'll listen to you, but if you can't, too bad. That's the way science works. So, we need to support our teachers in teaching science the way it's designed and the way to do.
One thing that strikes me a little bit is that we don't seem to have a very good outreach program to our teachers in ways that can assure them that what they do is deeply valued. And that when an outliner comes along that wants to have their kids challenge a teacher in the classroom, who was the one that asked that question? This happens to me. Students are empowered in ways, it's like a Yelp culture, where they get to criticize with impunity and know that we can't call them out in the way that we need to. And it doesn't just hurt that class. It hurts every student that's in that class that has to listen to that. This is not a criticism. This is not a critical outlook. This is a direct attack on teaching. It's been happening in the state for 7 years. And this illustrates fundamentally that the school board and the administration has not created the type of framework where students and their parents have to not attack teachers. Every year, 2.7 less students become teachers in this state. 2.7, that's 3%. We're already facing a shortage. So if parents can't tolerate a curriculum, they don't go to the teacher. Admin's got to handle that. They get paid money. And teachers don't. And if you have to stop to address critical comments made by a parent or a teacher, it's debilitating. And there's only so long you can do that. And then you just give up. And then you're demoralized. And then all students suffer.
So the bad part about going last is that pretty much everybody said what I was going to say. Other than I will say that my husband is a chemical engineer. Science is very important in our family. And I believe in the choose to opt out option.
How is our district performing at educating special ed students? And what ideas do you have to improve that?
Could you read that again, please?
How is our district performing at educating special ed students? And what ideas do you have to improve this?
Well, I want to answer that.
You be first.
Yay! So I get to be first. So again, my perspective is from raising my brother who has a developmental disability. He's now 23 and he is doing very well, working full-time, actually just started going to CDTC not too long ago, and I have a lot of hope that at some point he's going to be able to move out of our house. And how that happened was an entire lifetime of going through the public school systems and having an IEP and me being very actively involved in his education. Even though I was a special ed teacher, sitting on that other side of the table during IEP meetings was extremely intimidating, and I often felt like I didn't know a darn thing. But see, that's the thing. There's a lot of people out there that do know a lot about children and special needs and are doing amazing things in our classroom. But I don't think that they're getting as much support as they need to. Budget cuts have really affected special education, and that is a huge concern. So while I have seen some amazing things happen in this school district, I am specifically concerned about the fact that we no longer have a transition coordinator who is the person who can help individuals like my brother when he was in high school get out into the community and work in jobs like you and I work in and get that experience and learn those soft skills in real life environments. And that has been one of the biggest issues that I have seen because it affects a lot of students. But overall, I think there's some great things, but I also think that there's a lot of areas for improvement, but a lot of it comes down to budget. And so I want to give praise to where things are working, but I think that is going to be an area that I concentrate on for sure.
Penny, could you explain the IEP meeting for me?
Trisha.
Sorry.
An IEP is an individualized education plan.
Individualized education plan. About 2/3 of your audience knew that, and I had forgotten.
Yeah, it's kind of the Bible for, it talks about what the student's disability is and what are the classes that they're going to be taking and the accommodations that they'll get during their classes in order to be successful.
I support so much of what Tricia just said, and I've only been on the board side of it. We have Tonya Kluski come to us every year and say, here's where we're at and here's what we need. We did add extra aides, paras, special ed teachers. There was definitely some movement this last year. There's always room for improvement. I'm getting ready to go into the IEP field with my son, and it's a very intimidating situation, but I do feel like fortunately there is a lot of support in our district, and they will hopefully help me maneuver through it. Thankfully, it's only in the writing piece of things, but special ed isn't as extreme as people think, but it's incredibly important, and we do need to continue to focus on it and keep bringing people in to help our special ed team, whether it's paras, whether it's assistants, whether it's additional teachers.
I'm definitely not an expert in that. As a teacher, I've been involved in IEP meetings, things like that. But I can tell you the conversation is rich at the board level. We understand, we hear about curriculum shifts. We understand what caseloads are. It is lobbied that the caseloads are adequate or support the special education program. I do know Tonya fairly well, and I do know that she's very intentionally focused on being a good lobbyist for special ed in the district.
Oh, one of the hats I wore as a teacher was actually special education teacher, and sat in on many an IEP, which, like I said, individual plan, and basically what you do is you test it, you look at the student, you do a whole bunch of testing and a bunch of other things, and you figure out what the student's needs are. And then you sit down with this IEP plan, and you come up with a plan how you can help that student develop based on their needs. And we always tried to figure out what their strengths were, what their weaknesses were, and use their strengths to help them overcome their weaknesses. In the district right now, we have some really great special ed teachers, as As has been said, we added a bunch of pairs last year because we had a lot of people move into the district. The outcomes, I think, for our students are very good. And we definitely, the transition is one of the biggest parts of, especially at the high school level, is what are special ed kids going to do when they get out. And many of them are now going to college and being successful. And I'll give a shout out to my wife there who actually works at the college level with special ed kids, making sure that they graduate from college. And so there's really no limit on what kids coming out of special ed can do nowadays, whether it's CVTC, Stout River Falls, or whatever. There's a lot of opportunities for them.
Okay. I guess I'm new to this subject, but the person who could really, speak most to this is in the audience. And I appreciated that she threw her hat into the ring for this, because what we need to understand is, after we just heard everyone's responses, is that we need to raise our critical awareness about special education. It needs to be built into, like, if you look at our strategic plan for the Menomonie School District, if we really did value special education, it would feature prominently in there, but of course it doesn't. Also, we have a sense of assessing our students ad nauseum as they go into the round of standardized testing. But we don't have particular assessment tools for understanding how we're meeting our needs for our special needs students. It's been raised that not only have we suffered because of the cutback, but we also maybe not be meeting our critical obligations for national standards and IDEA in terms of what we need to provide for our special needs students. There's no critical tool by which we understand, oh, are we meeting these needs? What needs to be improved upon? And where are we going forward? And the last thing, because it appears it's not going to come up tonight, is the particular challenge that we face at a district with the increased voucher program that's going on nationally and statewide. Because you know that in this state, that when private schools make their choices about what students they include and which ones they don't, that they don't have to meet the same protocols that public schools do. And then we have to think about, what does that mean for not just special education kids in the district right now, what that's going to look like 5 years from now. And are we building in a program that helps us understand how we're moving forward on a number of critical questions? And for me, it's not just that the school board doesn't address voucher programs, we don't necessarily address the effects of what the voucher program threatens for the future.
Is that everybody? We're getting down to the wire. We got like 5 more minutes of this, and then we'll give you your closing statement time. These look a little tough, though. Yeah. Okay. So, during the campaign, there have been negative comments directed toward the current board and administration. If elected, do you feel this will impact your ability to work with the new board?
I better do this one. Here's one thing that I think is extremely valuable, and that is that when you're working in a community of people that are working towards a goal, that you need to have critical, engaged voices. Disagreement isn't a negative thing. As a matter of fact, if you're not getting disagreement, you don't have an effective board. When we laid out at UW Stout a program for developing a new global perspectives requirement in our university, it was contentious as hell. Good. It made us critically define what was important, why we value it. And it made those voices that were best informed about that subject matter speak up. Now, when I go to board meetings, there's a lot of good people there. But I don't hear the type of healthy debate and critical engagement. It's not just about what happens on the board and how we feel good at the end of the day. It's about how we feel good when we know that our students are getting the best education that our district can provide for them. And that's going to be contentious as hell to get there. Because there's tough choices that we need to make. And the people that need to be assessed right now, less so our students, less so our teachers, more so our policymakers. That's why we signed up for this. Not so that we can have the approbation of each other, but so that we can challenge each other going forward. So contentious debate, that makes us all better. It makes all of us better. And it makes us all feel better at the end of the day.
Disagreement is not a bad thing. I disagree with people all the time. All the time. Anybody that knows me knows that, and that is fine. But going on social media and posting things and saying things and not coming to the meetings and not speaking your voice is being a coward. You need to show up and you need to own it. And you need to engage with the board. We can't work with you and we can't fix it unless you come to the meetings and you attend.
As a board member, I actually look forward to the lively discussions. I've said often that my entire life, probably since the time I was born, I have been used to being thrown into really difficult, challenging situations and having to figure a way out and having to build rapport and problem solve in order to be successful, professionally and personally. That has been my life. And I'm not doing this because I feel like, oh, I need some more friends or I want to just be liked and this is a popularity contest. This is really about trying to make things better. We chose to stay in this school district for 12 years. We thought we were staying for 2. And it's because of the school and all the great things that are going on that has been a huge part of the reason that we have chosen to stay. So if that means that we have to have discussions because things just don't make sense and I want further clarification and that means not, trying to understand a perspective that is different from mine, then that's okay, and I look forward to those discussions.
So trust me, it's not all kumbaya. We're a very different group of thinkers. Some of us, we often disagree with one another. We often question one another, and we share perspectives. But in the end, we have to get something done too. And we do know how to work as a board. We recognize individually we have voices, but we also recognize that we speak as one board. Whether there's disagreement, whether one of us disagrees and the others are for something, in the end, we operate as one board. That's what gives us, that is who we are. That's what a school board is about.
Yeah, basically, I have to say ditto, but we do have long debates. And I think one of the things we do, the 9 of us, we work quite well together, and we oftentimes work on coming to consensus. And many times we'll throw a bunch of ideas around, and we'll change things around, and a lot of times the votes end up being 9-0 because we came to a consensus on it, because we were willing to compromise, listen to each other, and work together. Sometimes they don't. There's been a time I've been 1 and there's been 8, and well, that's the way it turns out. And there's been other times when, I've voted with the majority. But as her said, ultimately, you're there for the students. You're not there for your own ego. You're not there for yourself. You're there for the students and to make sure that they get a great education. And I think if you keep that in mind whenever you go to a board meeting, that it's really about the students and not about yourself, you come up with the good ideas and you come up with a consensus. And education moves forward.
Okay, we are going to start with the, each of these very fine candidates are going to have 2 minutes to wrap things up for you. And we're going to start with Penny. I do know which one is Penny. And work our way back this way for that. There were so many great questions, and I was concerned that we would have questions that would be all on one subject, or questions that don't have anything to do with what the school board actually does. And we had a lot of good questions, and if your particular question got morphed a bit when it got up here or didn't get asked, it's just because we don't have till midnight. So I'll let Penny start.
Thank you, Ellen, and again, thank you to the League of Women Voters and everybody that came out, and thank you for not keeping us here till midnight. You know, just to wrap things up, I'm very proud of the 2 years that I've been on the board, and I look forward to further serving our school district in our upcoming strategic planning process this next year, and to further support our students, our teachers, our administration, and all of the good work that they're doing. There's always more work that can be done, but I think that we're on the right road. I think that our budget is sound at this point, and it's always determined, obviously, by the state. But we're moving in the right direction, and we have a lot of great things that are coming down the pipe, and I would appreciate your vote next Tuesday on April 3rd.
Doesn't seem like long enough. I guess what I would just say is, again, the reason that I'm here is because I care deeply about the children of the school district as well as the families. And I really want to be that bridge that connects families that just, for one reason or another, don't feel like they're engaged with the school. And I know that I can do that because that's what I've been doing my entire professional career. And I think that communication is a two-way street, and I think that there's some ways that we can ask for the input from these families and students, and we can act on that information, and it will help bring us together as a community, and make us even stronger. I think there are a lot of really great things going on. I mean, my kids have benefited from so much in this school district, but I think we can be even better. And I hope and pray that that you vote for me next Tuesday, and that I get the chance to implement some of these ideas that I have. Thank you.
I think as I reflect on this opportunity, what a great way to have the community voice some of their ideas and concerns. So thank you for being part of this. All I can say is I need to live long enough to see teachers re-empower themselves, because part of it has to do with teachers taking back some of the power too. And we as a board certainly are supportive of that. I do worry, you know, the future is evolutionary, and the future demands lots of significant new ways of thinking and change. As knowledge, skills, and dispositions cycle faster and faster and faster, we have to empower our young people to also understand that they do have to have a great foundation upon which they can build that which they don't know they're going to need yet. So as a board, we can have an impact. As a board, any one of us up here, and the collective of us, I think are intentioned really well to serve. I would naturally love to have another 3-year experience, but that's your choice. Thank you for having given me the opportunity at this point.
So thank you to Ellen and the League of Women Voters for putting this on. Thanks to the Tanner for letting us get on the stage. Highlight of my life here. I've always wanted to be on this stage. But thank you mostly to all of you for being here. You know, democracy doesn't work without participation of the citizens and being informed and casting informed votes. So thank you very much. So yeah, I've been on the board for 3 years. I've been in education for a long time. And it's a passion for me. It's making sure that the students at every level can be successful and have the tools and the things they need to be successful. We've done a lot the last 3 years that I've been on the board. I think we've made some great progress. We've had some really interesting times. There were issues that came up that I had absolutely no idea were going to come up. You know, I figured the most controversial thing we would deal with would be like school calendar. And it's been a little more than that. But I think as a board and being on the board, I think we've had a lot of good positive impact that has happened, and I'd like to continue to do that. So get all your friends out to vote, please. The more people that vote, the better and stronger our democracy is. And I hope I have your vote. Thanks.
Geez, I don't know what to say now. I was thinking I would try and say something like, that would sound, I don't know, professional. Then I thought it was going to sound passionate. I thought maybe I'd say something that sounded, you know, like my wife would like it. But instead of doing that, I figured I'd just do what I want to do in the first place, and let's talk about me. When I talk about myself, I've got a history. We Freemans have been involved in education for over a century. And my granny was part of the first public education push in this country during the century in New York State. And she taught me something about education. And she taught me that words matter. And education isn't just a skill set that you give to your kids. Public education is a blessing. That's what she told me. She was a teacher, less than 10% of the kids got a high school education. I don't think we respect that enough. When I talk about my sissy Jan, she's beautiful. And she worked hard as a teacher. She had to work as a waitress too to make ends meet. And what she taught me was that education is an act of love. And she's suffered from depression, anxiety, and addiction. When I was moving her out of her last house, I was reading the cards that her students wrote to her. It's beautiful. And if we don't realize that education is an act of love for our kids, right, there's a problem. When I talk about my other sister, Kathy, she teaches health education. She's a nurse, and she gave up a career in the OR because she wanted to teach kids the skills that can empower them. When she talks about what she does for her kids, they realize that it's not just learning skills, but they feel better as little human beings at the end of the day. They can do things to save lives. That's empowerment. And I think about myself. I just got back from a trip to Selma. I studied about peace education under the people who worked with Martin Luther King Jr. And I humbled myself before people of color, people of poverty, and people of courage. And teaching is the way of life for courageous people. So I just want to have those words to help reframe where we're going with our discussion of what education is, where our school district is going. So thanks.
Well, that concludes this evening. I think you should feel comfortable approaching these people as we collect our things and start to think about what's next for the evening for each of us. But I really want to express my appreciation again for everyone who came tonight, both the people who came to listen, the people who came to ask questions, and those league members who came to work hard. So be sure and say hi to them on your way out the door too. Thank you very much.